So different wraps provide different things and you'll use them for different uses. And I'll explain a little bit more on each wrap that we do. So we're actually going to start with the polo wrap today. Today I'm going to start with the polo wrap. The polo wrap is actually one that you will use when riding. You will use it as protection from interference on horse's legs, or protection from like rocks or brush hitting your horse's legs. Some people think that it provides support, but it doesn't actually provide support because it still allows too much freedom of the joints to move. So to do your polo wrap, you're going to come over to your horse's leg and let him know that you're coming over. Then you want to kind of squat down next to your horse's leg, but you never want to kneel like both knees on the ground, because then if Earl scoops or something, and you want to be able to get up and move quickly. So you're going to start by making sure that your leg is really clean. You don't want to have any debris or anything underneath your wrap, because that can cause irritation. So then you're going to take your polo wrap and you want to unfold it so that it looks like a D. And then you want to start your wrap around the cannon bone. And so I like to come in between the cannon bone and the deep ventral flexor tendon here, and start kind of in that space. And then you're going to wrap around. And you want to have a little bit of tension here so that it doesn't start to slide down. And then I wrap around the second time just to lock that first one in place before I start going down. And you want to keep that tension on your polo wrap. By releasing the tension, you'll allow wrinkles to get into your wrap, which can actually cord the leg and cut off circulation. You want to keep it pretty tight, and I keep checking for wrinkles as I go here. And just slowly move down the leg. So you want to make sure that your polo wrap goes down on even increments. So I have different, or the same amount of space between each wrap here, so that I don't get too much wrap in one place. And then I'm going to come down just a little bit more. We're going to come down just below the ergot here on the back of this fetlock. And then I'm going to come back around to the front. And you want to make that nice V at the front of this fetlock. And then I'm going to come over here to the back and cover up that corner that I just made before I start going back up the leg. And then again, I'm going to be checking for wrinkles the whole way. Keep a pretty even tension. And go back up the leg. You want to go, again, in even increments. So you don't want to get a whole bunch of wrap in one place. Now, you want to be careful not to go too tight, because you don't want to cut off circulation to the horse's leg. But also, if you leave it too loose, then it's going to fall down, and then it can bunch up and create tension and cord the horse's leg. So as I got to the end here, I'm going to have to pull this out and around so that I can keep the tension here and velcro it in place. So I ended my wrap at the top of this leg, just below the knee, and my velcro ended kind of at the front, which is actually a pretty good location. You want it to end kind of on the outside towards you, so that if he brushes his legs up against each other, he doesn't accidentally undo the velcro. And you also see that I went from inside to outside and front to back. That is also because if he interferes with himself, you don't want, if it were wrapped the other way, it could also come unwrapped again if he interferes with himself. Okay, so you want to make sure that your polo is tight enough. You should be able to fit a finger in at the top and the bottom. And then you can also flick it. And it should sound about the same the entire way through wrap. You can also squeeze it use a hoof wrap for a couple of different reasons. So first would be to treat an infection in the foot, like if they've got an abscess. Or you would also use it to kind of protect the foot if they like threw a shoe and you were worried about them getting an infection. So if you're using it to treat an infection, you would put a hoof wrap on directly after your foot has dried, after soaking it in betadine, Epsom salt, and warm water. And you want to make sure you do this so that your foot is super clean before you start wrapping your foot. Okay, so with Earl here, I'm going to come over here and lift up his foot. And I'm going to clean his foot out really well. You want to make sure your foot is super clean before you start putting your hoof wrap on. Okay, so then you're going to apply your diaper. So you're going to put the butt of the diaper on the toe of the hoof and the front of it like on the sole of the hoof. So that way your Velcro tabs come around the back. There we go, there's the front. So it's really important that you make sure you get the bulbs of the heel around under your wrap. Because if they're not over the bulbs, your wrap's just going to come right off. So then I make a kind of little X over the bulb of the heel with the Velcro. Okay. So then you're going to take your vet wrap, and basically all you need to do with the vet wrap is just cover up the diaper. You're just trying to get a layer between the diaper and the duct tape. So again, I'm going to try to make kind of an X over the bulbs of the heel. And you don't really have to be too concerned about cording over the hoof, because you can't really cord the keratin. But when it comes to over the coronet band, you should be a little bit more cautious of that because you can cord the coronet band. And once you get really good at hoof wraps, you can use a whole lot less vet wrap. It just kind of takes some practice. So as I end, I want to make sure that I come again over the bulbs of the heel so I can get that really good boot on. Okay, can I reach for my scissors? And you don't want to put the foot down after you started wrapping, because like you don't want to get dirt under your wrap. So as you can see here, I kind of put my knee around his hoof, under my knee, so that I don't have to put his foot down, so I can use both hands. Okay, cool. So now that I've got the vet wrap on, I can go ahead and apply the duct tape. So you can see here, I made a square of duct tape, and I've only made this with 2 layers, but if you're wanting to keep the hoof wrap on overnight, you're going to have at least 5 to 7 layers because they will wear through the duct tape pretty quickly. So I'm just going to place it right over the sole of his foot and kind of smack it on. And then I've got all these other pieces pieces of duct tape, and I'm just going to use it to kind of lock it into place. So I like this more on the front of his foot, and then also again you want to make sure to get around the bolt of the heel. He's getting a little bit dancy, so I might have to change to holding him with his foot with my hand again. He continues. What are you doing? So the most thing I'm most concerned about when doing this duct tape is that you never want to touch the horse's skin or hair with the duct tape because it can irritate the horse's skin. So I'm going to try to keep it actually just over the vet wrap. So again, I'm going to make sure that I cover the bulbs of the heel really well. So that'll make that kind of boot so that I can be sure it's going to stay on really well. Okay, so now that I think I've got it covered pretty well, I'm going to go ahead and put this foot down. We'll kind of see where we are. And that looks pretty good. Get another piece on. So your duct tape is going to be kind of almost a waterproof layer. So like if you put a shoe on, or if you put a hoof wrap on because they threw a shoe, and you want to make sure that it's still going to turn out, you would want to make sure you cover it with the duct tape really well. So that way it won't get wet. And if you were wrapping his foot because you're soaking it and worried about an infection, then and you're worried about the cornet band getting too mushy, you can cut down the front of this wrap to kind of give the cornet band some air. But don't cut off the back, because if you cut off too close to the heel bulbs, then your wrap's going to come off. So to take the hoof wrap off, I have my scissors here. It is better if you have bandage scissors, so you don't accidentally stab the horse. But if you don't have bandage scissors, that's fine. You just gotta be really careful. So I'm gonna pick up his foot here again. I'm gonna tuck it under my knee again. And you're just gonna cut down the middle, the back. And really all you gotta do is get the duct tape, because the diaper will come right off. And there you go. A wound and standing wrap. So you would use this if you had a wound on the leg that you wanted to cover up to kind of keep debris and keep out infection. So to start with your wound wrap, we're going to use a Kelpa pad. This is a non-stick Kelpa pad so that it doesn't stick to the wound when it creates a scab. So then you're not tearing off the scab in the horse bait. So you're going to take your shiny side, that's your non-stick side, and apply it to the leg. So if you're going to use an ointment or anything, just use your Kelpa pad to scoop out your ointment, and then you can apply it to your leg, so that way you're not getting any germs into your ointment. So I'm going to come down here, and put my gauze on, or put my telpa pad on, and then I have roll gauze here ready. So non-stick side down, non-stick side down, and then I'm going to start with my roll gauze, and you just need to wrap it around a couple of times just to kind of hold your telpa pad in place. You don't really need a whole lot, and it doesn't actually need to be very tight either. So it can be kind of stringy and hard to cut, as you just witnessed. But just be aware of that when you're trying to cut your roll gauze. Another important wrap to note is a pressure wrap, which you would use when there's excessive bleeding that is not stopping. You will use a pressure wrap pretty much with anything that's around. You can use gauze pads, telpa pads, diapers, really anything that will stop the bleeding. And you put on your diaper, you wrap it in vet wrap or whatever you have on hand, or track wraps, whatever you have on hand, and keep wrapping until the blood just stops soaking through your wrap. If you do have your blood soak through your wrap, go ahead and put another wrap on top of it. Don't try to peel the old wrap off because you'll remove any clotting that has formed. Okay, so now that I have my wound bandage on, we're going to apply a standing wrap. So for your standing wrap, you're going to need your pillow and a track wrap. So, and your standing wrap can also be used for a couple other things. It doesn't provide a whole lot of support, but it does provide a little bit of support. And it's really good for keeping compression in the leg if you're trying to keep down swelling or a horse that stalks up. It's really good for keeping that swelling out of the leg and preventing that swelling. It doesn't really do a whole lot though to help swelling after the leg is already swollen. You want to catch it before the leg swells. Okay. So I'm come down here and I have my pillow, and you're going to apply it in the same method that we did the polo, from inside to outside and front to back. And you also want it to be in that D shape. And again, I'm going to start on the other side of the leg, and I want it to come from just below the knee to just below the fetlock. So, and you got to keep this pillow pretty tight. If you don't get your pillow tight enough, there's no way you can get your wrap tight enough after the fact. So as I go around, I kind of just tuck your corners back in, try to keep it pretty tight. And then I'm going to take my track wrap and do the same thing with it. You just start on the inside, outside, front to back. You want to keep it pretty tight. The hardest part of the track wrap is starting the track wrap. That's when you're going to get the most wrinkles, and it's hardest to keep the tension. So I'm going to come around here, and kind of the same way I did with the polo, I'm going to go around again before I start going down the leg to keep that tension so I don't lose the tension before I start my wrap. And again, I'm just going to check for wrinkles as I go. And you want to leave a solid inch at the top and the bottom of your wrap, so that way if your track wrap slides a little bit, it's not going to cord the leg. So you got to keep it pretty tight. And again, you want to go around in even layers at an even angle. Consistency. I try not to pull it tight as I go around the back of the leg. If you're wanting to pull it a little bit tighter, pull that around as you go over the front of the cannonball. I want to have that V in the front of the wrap when I start to go back up. And then come back around and wrap that corner, that little fold that just happened. To make sure that it doesn't all come apart when you take a step. And then again, I'm going to start going back up again in even increments and keeping it pretty tight. Again, this is kind of hard to keep tight as you get to the Velcro here. And similar to the polo wrap, it would be ideal if this Velcro ended on the outside towards me. It's okay that it ended on the inside, but we could be concerned about him brushing it with the other leg, especially if you have the other leg wrapped, and catching it and undoing it. So it might be a good idea to fasten this one with masking tape by spiraling it around the leg just once or twice. Okay, and then to make sure that you've got your wrap on good, you want to make sure that you can fit 2 fingers in it at the top and the bottom. Make sure that you haven't got it too tight. And you can also squish it again to make sure it's the same level of squishy throughout the entire wrap. Because you know you didn't get one part really tight and the rest of it was loose. And you could use a variation of this wrap too for shipping. So what you would want to do for a shipping wrap is you want to have a pillow that goes low enough to cover the bulbs of the heel, so that if they like interfere with themselves during shipping, they are less likely to hurt themselves. So if your wrap isn't long enough to do that, you can also use a bell loop to cover the bulbs of the heel. I tuck back, keep this pillow pretty tight. And especially on the hind limb, it's really hard to get even tension around because it's kind of just shaped weird. So you'll kind of have it at an angle almost. But you want to make sure that you have an even tension throughout the wrap. So it's alright with angles. And then this can be like the hardest part. Is trying to make sure that you got that tension while starting your track wrap. So the only thing that you really want to be super careful of is that you don't start over the joint, because there's so much movement in that joint again that it'll just come unwrapped. So I'm going to start actually below the joint here and go around that way. So next I'll be demonstrating the sack wrap. The sack wrap you'll use whenever you have a wound or swelling above the joint. So to start your sack wrap, you want to make sure that your leg is really clean. So we're going to start here. We're going to start with our normal standing wrap, except for it's going to be a little bit lower on the leg. So you want it to sit right above the coronary band, so it'll sit on top of the heel. But you still want your pillow to be just below the joint, so I have it so it'll come just below the hock. So then you want your pillow to be tight, because if your pillow isn't tight enough, you can't get it tight enough with the track wrap. So I put my hand around the fetlock to make sure that I got it tight enough around the fetlock, because it's a lot easier to make it tight up at the top than it is around the tetlock. So then you want to make sure you don't get any wrinkles in your wrap, in your pillow especially, because if you get any wrinkles it can cause cording, which is when you cut off circulation to the leg, and it can cause a bow, a tendon, or you can bow the leg. So I'm going to start my track wrap now, and I like to start it on the inside, and you want to keep it pretty tight and make sure that you don't have any wrinkles. So I go around, and then once I've got it anchored in place, I can start working my way down. And you want to go in even increments at an even angle down. And you can pull your pillow tighter as you go too. So you keep going around, you want to keep even tension on it, so that you don't have one part of your wrap that's tighter than another part, because that will also cause cording and cut off circulation. And then you go almost all the way down. You want to have about an inch at the bottom of your wrap, because you don't want your track wrap to slide off of the pillow, and that will also cord the leg. So now that I've gotten as far down as I want to go, I'm going to start working my way back up. And we want our wrap to end at the top of the leg, with the Velcro ideally facing outwards. And again, I want to leave about an inch at the top. And as I'm going around, I'm making sure that I don't have any wrinkles in my wrap. And this is the hard part, to keep it tight while you're getting your Velcro wrapped. And to make sure that you don't have any wrinkles. So I'm going around and I'm pulling all my wrinkles out. There we go. And so that ended in a pretty good spot. We have our Velcro is ending at the top and kind of towards the back, but it's also outside. And we're also about to put another wrap around this. So we're not as concerned about if he interferes with himself, he's not going to undo this Velcro, because we're going to have another wrap on top of it. So this is our anchor for our stack wrap. Next, we're going to put our next wrap on. It'll go over the joint. We use this. It is low enough so that it's resting on the heel, so it's not going to slide down. That's what makes it the anchor for the top wrap. You can either set the top wrap on top of this wrap or overlap it. And it can change depending on the size of your horse's leg and what you're trying to do. And sometimes just wrapper's preference. So as I got this here, I finished it. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze it to make sure that I have even tension throughout. And you should be able to stick 2 fingers in at the top and the bottom. Yeah. And you can also flick it. And it should sound about the same throughout. So next I'm going to grab my next pillow and my next track wrap. And my pillow is kind of loose, so I'm going to unwrap it and roll it up again so that it can be tighter. And again, you want to make sure your leg is all cleaned off, which I brushed it off before we started. So it's all clean. And like I said, you can either stack this neck strap on top, or you can also overlap it. We prefer to overlap it in Dressage Barn here, because the track wraps can get in between the 2 pillows and cord the leg here and cut off that circulation or bow a tendon. So we really prefer for it to be overlapped, because there's a lot less likely that that'll happen. So to start this, I'm going to overlap it an inch or 2. And I like to start on the inside again and grab around the hock. And then start wrapping. And again, you want to be pretty tight. And keep that tension. Because if you don't have tension when you start the pillow, you're not going to be able to have enough tension with your track wrap. So there, I've got my pillow on. I'm going to take my track wrap. Ooh. Sometimes when you do a stack wrap, they don't enjoy it, and they might swing their leg around or something, try to get it off. So you've got to be ready to move whenever you are wrapping. So that's why I'm squatting here rather than having a knee on the ground or anything. You can keep one knee on the ground, but you want to make sure that you can get up quickly in case they decide to move. So just like on the other wrap, I started at the top, and you always want to make sure that you're not on the joint, because the joint has so much mobility, especially the hock, that the wrap will come right unwrapped if you have it starting or ending on the joint. So now I'm going to go ahead and got it anchored in place. So I'm going to start working my way down. And we've got a lot more ground to cover, or leg to cover, on this wrap. So we're going to go at a pretty steep angle so that I can get where I need to go in time. We want to cover this Velcro from the previous wrap and then work our way back up to the top of the leg. So again, I'm keeping pretty good tension on here. I want to make sure that I get this wrap tight enough. And I'm also going down at consistent angles. I'm going around and I'm checking for wrinkles as I go and pulling my pillow tighter as we go. So I'm going to go all the way down here. And cover up the Velcro from the last wrap. And then I'm going to start working my way back up again. So I'm running out of wrap here, and we don't want to end the wrap on the joint again because there's too much mobility, it'll come off. So I'm going to go ahead and end it below the joint here, and we'll use a third track wrap to secure everything in place. Again, check to make sure there's no wrinkles. And I kind of like where that Velcro ended. It's on the outside towards me. And we're going to go ahead and use our third track wrap. So just like the last one, we're also going to start this one at the top. And I like to leave a couple inches at the top. I usually leave more than an inch because especially the top joint has so much mobility. It's really easy for this track wrap to slide up and cord that tendon, or cord the leg, bow that tendon, and we really don't want that. So I leave a lot of room and extra pillow at the top of the leg. So I'm going to go ahead and start my wrap at the top. Now I've got it anchored in place, making sure I don't have any wrinkles. I'm going to head start working my way down. I can go at a slower angle this time because I don't have as far to go. But my leg still is pretty wide around here, so I'm still going to go at a pretty steep angle, steeper than I would for just a standing wrap. And again, you're going to use this if you ever have like a wound above the joint or swelling above the joint that you're trying to compress. So it's important to note that your stack wrap, or any wraps in general, aren't really good at reducing swelling. They mostly will prevent swelling. So you want to make sure that you're not trying to use a wrap to make the swelling go away. You're using the wrap to prevent more swelling. So you will often wrap a horse after their leg has been cold hosed and dried. Now you want to make sure that their leg is completely dry before you start wrapping, because it's perfect it's a perfect situation for like mold and bacteria and fungi to grow. So I'm not really happy with where my Velcro ended there because it's on the inside. And especially if you were wearing another stack wrap, he could catch that Velcro and unwrap his wrap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some masking tape and elasticon to finish this wrap, and we'll use the masking tape to help secure this Velcro, especially because the Velcro hasn't overlapped as much as I would like it to. That usually happens on stack wraps because the leg is so wide. The track wraps aren't really made for anything that wide. Wrap is finished. I'm going to go ahead and use masking tape to secure it in place. We always use masking tape on stack wraps because the Velcro doesn't overlap so much when you have it on the upper leg. It's just, there's not enough Velcro here to overlap and make sure that it's secured in place. And especially like even if you were doing just a standing wrap, you would probably want to use masking tape if your Velcro ended on the inside like this one did. So I'm going to go ahead and take my masking tape, and just lay it on. And I like to go around in a spiral. With the masking tape, it isn't as important to spiral because your masking tape will just break if it gets too much tension built up. But especially if you're using something like duct tape or electrical tape, which is not a very good idea because it will be really tight, and those ones don't have a whole lot of give, and they're kind of tough. The masking tape will just snap if the tension gets too tight. Especially like if you're using masking tape or electrical tape or something, and you had it that didn't spiral, that could definitely cause cording and cut off that circulation in the leg. So now that I have the masking tape in place, I'm going to go ahead and finish this wrap with elasticon. So the elasticon has a little bit of stretch, not a whole lot. That's why we use it rather than like vet wrap, and it's sticky on one side. So what I like to do to make sure that I don't get too much tension built up under the wrap is I like to lay out how much I think I'll need and unwrap it and then wrap it back up loosely. Cool. And now I'm going to go ahead and just start wrapping it. You want it half on the leg and half on your wrap. And this is going to help keep dirt and debris out. So I didn't quite get enough wrap there. The only thing, I'm not really concerned about that. The only thing that we're concerned about is if you wrapped it around the leg, because that can build up a lot of tension and that could cord the leg. So I'm going to cut that off and lay that flat. I don't like that extra string there, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. And then we do the same thing at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap how much wrap that I think I'll need. And then I'm going to roll it back up. Oh. And like I said, sometimes they just especially don't like being wrapped. And they might like swing their leg around, and they can almost cow kick sometimes with this stack wrap on because they don't like it. It restricts their movement. That's kind of the point of the wrap, that it does offer a little bit of support just as much as it restricts their movement. And sometimes the horses don't really like that, so they might react to it. And you want to be able sure that you can move quickly if they start to react. So I'm coming back down to his leg, and we're going to do the same thing at the bottom that we did at the top. I'm just going to lay the elasticon on, half on the wrap, half on his leg, foot. There we go. And cut that off. There we go. And there you have your stack wrap. Can you go ahead and get a close up to me? again, you'll use your stack wrap if you have an injury that you're wanting to keep covered that's above the joint, or if you have any swelling or anything that you're trying to keep compressed above the joint. How to do a polo wrap, puff wrap, wound wrap, standing wrap, and stack wrap, and their various uses. So I'm glad you took the time to watch my video today. Happy wrapping!